I've covered many bizarre horror titles on this channel, but Germs, the targeted town, may be the most bizarre, and may also be the most obscure title I've covered. A 1999 PS1 Japanese-only title that received an English translation in 2024, a translation based off a Spanish translation from 2021, a title that sold few copies and a rarity to find. A first-person title with open-world elements before that was very much a thing. Yet, it's an overworld devoid of people and color, giving off an unsettling vibe. A similar feeling to an empty gmod or source engine map. But it's not devoid of people. You'll find them inside, where you'll find the game leaping across the uncanny valley in their appearances. From the faceless to ones with digitized faces, there's plenty to unsettle you in Germs. You have a combat system with RPG elements that wouldn't feel out of place in an older Bethesda title, one with plenty of oddities and jank. A game marching to the beat of its own drum. Even more so with the story. It has elements of Invasion of the Body Snatchers mixed in with elements of cosmic horror, existential horror, where the story goes where it wants to. It gets out there to say the least. Now, is Germs some forgotten gem, a diamond in the rough? I wouldn't say so. It sure is rough around the edges. It can be downright frustrating at times, but if you're looking for an out there experience that few others have played, consider giving Germs a try. There's little out there like it, with several elements well ahead of their time. If you do have interest in checking it out, check out the pinned comment or description for a link to the English translation. Shout out to Grundo1561 for creating an English translation, and a shout out to Mr. Nobody for creating the Spanish translation, which the English translation was based off of. And a special shout out to my fellow Boulder Punchers who further support the channel through Patreon or YouTube memberships. If you'd like to receive early access to videos, receive periodic updates, and my undying gratitude, consider joining your fellow Boulder Punchers. With that, let's dive into the wild world of Germs, the targeted town. We begin with a text intro setting the stage of Germs. I will note the odd wrapping of text. I'm not sure if this was a limitation of the English translation. That said, it does add to the bizarre and unsettling nature of Germs. We are in the city of Newtown, a place where we, our unnamed and unseen protagonists, grew up. Once a prosperous town with its mining, the mines closed and many people left town, including us. We left for college to become a reporter. We've had a recent transfer back to Newtown to work our newspaper's small branch. But something odd happened the past few days. Something crashed, might have been a meteor on the outskirts of town. Citizens are having strange delusions. People are acting different. Something is spreading across town. It's not the simple cold. It's up to us to investigate the heart of the issue here in Newtown. Here's how the flow and rhythm of Germs works. At your office, you'll get email and phone calls. You'll receive a request to come check a place out, which you could do at your leisure. There's no rush or time limits. This is an open world title after all. I have to note the login sound for your computer. Talk about foreboding. There's a bunch of these sounds throughout Germs that add to the odd nature of the game. To navigate around, you can walk, drive, take the bus, or take the train. I have to note the control scheme of Germs. It's a bit awkward and takes time to get used to. Using the direction pad or analog stick doesn't move you. You can only look around. To move forward, you use triangle, X to move back, L1 and R1 to strafe left and right. It's okay for when you're walking around. It's in combat situations where issues arise. But hold that thought for now. And you walk slow. You can do the trick of strafing at an angle to move forward at a faster speed, something many first-person titles adhere to. That said, unless you're within interiors, there's little point to walking around town. Best use some form of transportation, one being your car, which uses the same control scheme as walking. It doesn't handle too bad, although again it takes a bit to get used to. It's easy to get your car stuck. Some of the roads narrow down to the point where you need pinpoint precision to move forward, else you have to back up and try again. But should your car become stuck, there is a solution. There's plenty of phone booths throughout town. Use it to call your assistant back at the office and they'll deliver it right outside the payphone. Handy to use in a pinch. Another Japan-only PS1 open-world title that released around this time frame, Zerna Falls, had something like this as well. A bit of a bandage to a bullet wound solution. Did your car get stuck? Well, call for someone to get it out. There's something to be said about this looping audio that plays while driving. Something that becomes quite hypnotic over a period of time, where you zone out as you make your way around with the sound of the engine in the background. Driving around takes some time to get a feel for the city. There's an in-game map that's quite useless, both in its size and what it covers. But the manual does include a map of the city with key points highlighted, very much handy. That said, there's a far more efficient, handy option than driving around. That's using the bus. There are 3 bus lines that you could use to get around town. Most notable landmarks or key locations are along these lines. There tends to be a payphone by each stop, so you could call the office to have your car delivered to you if need be after. I have to note more of these foreboding sound effects, like this one when you leave an interior or take the bus. Buses aren't the only form of public transportation. There's also trains at our disposal. That said, it's nowhere near as fast as a bus, and there are far fewer stops. Still, if you want to take the train, you can. I'm sure that you have many questions by now with watching the footage in the background. Where are all the people? Where are the other cars? Why are the outdoor sections all in gray? What's with the large arrows pointing you towards certain locations? Well, I wish I had those answers, dear viewer. I wish I could come across some developer interview of these design choices. Alas, I could not find a single thing on it. How much of it was deliberate versus console limitations? After all, this was a PS1 title. Bringing up Mazurna Falls again, it's a night and day difference. There were people and cars were out and about in the open world. But there's nothing here in Germs but you, which does fit with some of the game's tone. After all, a recent incident resulted in an infection spreading across town. The only place you could find people are within interiors. But why are the open world stretches all in gray? Was this a deliberate choice, or was that a technical limitation? Whatever the reason, it sure adds to the unease and the uncanny valley nature of Germs. Also add the fact that you have these large arrows pointing you towards interior entrance points, which is handy considering how everything else is in gray. It's an element that doesn't come across as video gamey, but adds more to the uneasy atmosphere. If you ever played a gmod map where no one else is around, there's something about the source engine that has this uneasy atmosphere, where you could hear the sounds of others in the distance, but you can't see a soul. It's a bit hard to describe, but you know that feeling if you have played something like that in the source engine. There's a similar vibe here in Germs, where you can hear the sounds of distant cars every once in a while, but it's only you out here in the open world sections, despite the fact the city has a functioning bus and train system. Now, I don't know how much merit there is to it, but there's this idea that younger generations like Gen Z find liminal spaces terrifying, where it unnerves them like nothing else. You have things like the backrooms achieving high levels of popularity. Well, I have to wonder how they would handle the open world stretches in Germs. There's something about this game that wouldn't feel out of place of something you'd find on itch.io. But Germs was doing these things well before those titles came along. So how much of the open world is a deliberate design decision versus technical limitations? I don't know. They were working with a shoestring budget and a staff size even small for this time frame of the late 90s. Whatever the reason, it sure adds to the unique, unsettling nature of Germs. How do the interiors of Germs work? Well, that's where the meat of the game's gameplay lies, along with color, unlike the outdoor stretches. Here you'll find NPCs making their way about, both adding to the uncanny valley vibe of Germs. One type have no faces. Basic NPCs, nameless characters. Well, sort of, more on that in a bit. On the other side of the coin, you have key characters with faces, and these are as unsettling as those without faces, where they have a digital scan of a face on top of them. Now, many games around this time frame did something similar, Max Payne being a great example, but there's something very unsettling about them here, up close and personal in first person. If I had to guess, it was photographs of the development team or friends of the development team. It adds to that eerie vibe and a somewhat similar approach to how the Forbidden Siren series handled faces, where there's something not quite right with these individuals. It's also within interiors where you take part in combat, and boy is it an awkward affair full of jank. A perfect fit for a game like Germs. Now, dear viewer, I want you to watch the following combat stretch and ask yourself, what game does this remind me of? Still not sure? Well, I'll give you a hint by changing the music. It If your first thought, dear viewer, was Morrowind, then come to the stage to collect your prize. Be prepared to miss, and miss, and miss, and miss some more, especially in the game's early stretch. But like Morrowind, the more you use a certain type of weapon, the better you get with it. More damage and higher accuracy. This bar in the top right shows how you're doing, or at least I think it is. It was never quite clear with me on that front of a weapons level. Thank goodness our guns have unlimited ammo. I can't begin to think of how many shots I had that missed an enemy despite point-blank range. That said, the same goes for your opponents, especially with those with ranged attacks, where they take a moment to aim at you, pause, and shoot. In that moment where they pause, they've lined up their shot. All you need to do is move a bit to either side and you're fine. The end result is full of jank and hilarity of constant shots missing from both parties. Add in these awkward controls and you get into scenarios of strafing around your enemy hoping for a hit. Ever see those videos of laser tag world champions? It reminds me of that. You'd have to be in the right range to even have the ability to land attacks. If there's a triangle above an enemy's head, you can at least hit them. If not, there's not even a miss notification for your attacks. Sometimes you could be right up in their face and there's still no triangle, so you have to reposition yourself, hoping now you'll be able to hit them. It's like something out of a game full of Eurojank, something you'd expect from an Eastern European developer. What we have here is a case of Japanese jank, or I guess Japa-jank. There's an early boss encounter that best exemplifies the absurd combat encounters of Germs, a boss fight with 3 enemies. I spend a good 5 minutes here doing the awkward strafing shuffle as I wither down their health over the course of those 5 minutes. There's other hiccups that can make combat a frustrating affair, like having others around that you could talk to. There was one fight I had with a guy in the hotel lobby, but my character kept snapping to the receptionist. When you get in range of an NPC, it will initiate conversation. I had this happen several times throughout the fight. Or having fights in small rooms. Most of the more difficult combat encounters are in open spaces, giving plenty of room to strafe. But there was a frustrating fight in the hotel room where I got stuck several times trying to strafe around. Now, things will ease up as the game progresses. You'll find better weapons that make short work of enemies. Ones that hit more than they'll miss. Even then, weapon swapping is an awkward affair with Germs, like everything else. You can only hold 2 weapons at one time. So if you find one out in the wild, what happens with it? Can you use it right there and then? No, it goes back to your office where you could swap it in there. Later on, I only started to carry one weapon, knowing I may have come across something better and didn't need a trip back to the office. That said, I could see why they made that design choice. It gives you further incentive to head back to your office to check your email or calls for further quests. One optional weapon you could find is the Cloudbuster, and it's a real game changer. Going with the name as a scientist you could obtain it from, Wilhelm Reich. Although it's unfortunate that the game doesn't make a reference to the song Cloud Busting by Kate Bush, the game makes references to other real-world figures with their given names. More on that in a bit. This became my weapon of choice for the rest of the game. You can quote-unquote buy weapons at the weapon store, and when I say buy, I mean ask the person running the shop for a weapon. There's no currency exchange happening in this eccentric town. But getting a weapon from the store is even more frustrating than finding one out in the wild. You can't select a weapon here from the list to send back to your office. You need to have a slot open while you're here to get the weapon you want. For whatever reason, one of the possible weapons is a boomerang. Wasn't expecting that as a choice, to say the least, but we'll go with it. Germs does something that I can't recall many other titles doing. Upon killing someone, when you examine their corpse, you'll get some information about them. Their name, their age, a brief little bio, their occupation, their hobbies, how they mutated, even for animals or the mutants we face. Each one will provide you information about them upon killing them. And in case you're wondering, yes, you could kill anyone in Germs. Want to get further info about them and their backstory? Well, kill them to examine their corpse. Well, most characters. Others will respond. I guess asking these citizens about their lives is too much to ask. It's quite amusing to have them stand there as you wail away on them, missing your hits on the regular, without a care in the world and the occasional dodge. While writing the script, the game Avowed came out, an RPG from Obsidian in the vein of an Elder Scrolls title. There's been a lot of poking fun at the game for the fact you can't kill NPCs. There's several popular videos showing older games with greater levels of interactivity than Avowed. Well, here's another one. If you want, you could kill people to your heart's content. And there's the incentive to by learning more about their backgrounds and fleshing out their world. To avoid death, you have a few options. You have health and a stamina bar. You can take body damage that will impact parts of your body. Arms will reduce accuracy, legs will reduce movement speed. To keep your stamina up, you could rest or purchase, again in quotation marks, food. There's sit-down restaurants where you could eat, or fast food joints where you could load up on supplies. That said, if you eat too much, you'll get sick and lose some stamina from overeating. This always seemed to happen whenever I tried eating any fast food. What about for healing damage? You have a couple of options. One is to visit the hospital for healing. The other option that's more convenient is visiting a chiropractor? Alright. There's one that's right across the street from your office. An adjustment also serves to pass the in-game time. Despite being an open world title, Germs is loosey-goosey with its in-game timer. Restaurants are open for select hours, but otherwise the passage of time does little to impact the flow of Germs. Bringing up Mazurna Falls again, that was a title where you had to be strict with time. It was easy to miss key events and lock yourself out of the good ending. Passage of time was merciless. In Germs, if you complete an objective along the critical path, returning to your office will give you an email or phone call of what you can do next. There's another element to Germs that helps the game stand out even more. We've already gone over its oddball nature, but there's one key element I haven't touched on yet. What happens if you die? Do you get a game over? No, you yourself become mutated. You'll end up in the mines in the northwest section of town. Your portrait will change to show this mutation. You could talk to several mutants while you're out there. Now, you can return to normal by taking a trip to the hospital, but remaining mutated does open the game to more unique dialogue. Mutants won't attack you, but instead you could talk with them. You can learn more about this alien species that crashed in town. How about humans? Well, not all humans you see are human. Some are aliens who have yet to mutate. Talking to them opens up more unique dialogue options. Like in the train station, talking to these aliens in the form of humans will mention about preparing seeds to change people into mutants. What about plain old humans? Some will tell you to go away, others may even try to kill you as a result. But you will get different dialogue than before. So if you want to get the full backstory of what's going on in this eccentric town, you'll need to do a couple things. One involves killing NPCs, and the other is to become a mutant yourself. That way you open up more dialogue options to put the pieces together of what happened. Now, while not an exact connection, it does remind me of Earthbound after you beat the final boss. Spoiler alert for a game that's over 30 years old, plus it's one of those games with a reputation of having fans that have never played the game, akin to Silent Hill 2. After you beat the final boss, you can talk with various NPCs you met along the way and they'll have new dialogue. It did make me think of that while playing Germs. Before going through Germs' major beats, I want to bring up the sound design again. If you go to places like the train station or a restaurant, there's a short audio loop in the background. One that makes it sound like you're in a busy area despite the fact there's few people around. It's a short, droning, hypnotic loop that adds further to the uncanny valley nature of Germs. And that's the same case for the music. The music in the power plant is quite industrial, fitting for the setting, but has little variation. Looping over and over, with what the game is going for, it really adds to the atmosphere and is a perfect fit. I have little idea what's going on with the hotel track here. I wondered at first if it was an emulation issue, but no, I looked at other videos on YouTube and this is how it is. Like, I try to wrap my head around it, but I can't really find the rhythm. It reminds me of electronic music you'd find under the Warp record label, like Aphex Twin or Audicra. And then you have the music track for the cathedral. Holy cow, does this one build a sense of dread and unease. It's a more straightforward track from the others, but the mixture of the church bells, the church organs, the synths, it's one of the creepier tracks I've heard in a game in recent memory. Add in all the faceless NPCs walking around and you have a recipe for dread. With that, let's go through some of the major beats of Germs. Our first email in our inbox is from Fujita, a friend from our high school days. He mentions to come over to his house for a chat. Something strange is going down at the nuclear power plant. He's been taking after his father's work, building a device that measures the distortion of the space-time continuum. Well, we've already gone over much of the bizarre subject matter of Germs. Let's see where this will take us. All signs point to the center of the nuclear power plant as a source, and this power plant interior will serve as our first dungeon along the critical path. It's not some intricate dungeon you'd find in something like Morrowind, bringing that game up again, or Kingsfield game. Some branching paths, but more a case of go down the other path to get the key to use along the other path. Our friend Fujita comes along with us. Uh-oh, is this a dreaded escort mission? No. He'll pop up at random intervals to chime in about something before vanishing again. This is one of those moments that could take you for a surprise, especially with that face of his. The boss waiting for us at the end of the power plant is this mutated dog. So far, we've dealt with basic dogs and humans along the way. They are mutated, but don't appear that way, save for one former human rocking this new look. This mutated dog at the end tells us we can no longer be friends and hope that our races can become one before fighting him. As mentioned, we'll get bits and pieces about these alien species. More info will come from these boss fights and examining their corpses after. Of course, dying and talking with those mutated out and about will provide even more info. Fujita will get back to us later about his findings at the power plant. We'll get an email from someone telling us that people are disappearing at the church. After talking with a few select individuals, we'll get access to the upper area. It seems the Archbishop has turned here, but they say that they're more surprised by his thoughts than his appearance. And that's understandable when you listen to what they have to say. I don't know how much got lost in translation while localizing the dialogue, or if it's as bizarre in Japanese as it is here, guessing a bit of column A and column B. As I mentioned earlier, this English translation is based off a Spanish translation. This is the fight I brought up earlier in a group of 3. Well, that took me about 5 minutes to whittle them down. At this point I didn't have the best of weapons. In fact, these were my basic weapons I started with. My fortunes would soon change, however, once I got that Cloudbuster. As we progress further, we're going to come across more mutants in disguise. I have to give the props to the team for animations here, like this fight with one mutant in the train station with his head shifting back and forth. The further we get in Germs, the more out there the mutant designs become, more obscure and, well, alien. Like Fujita, we'll get in touch with someone else from our high school days, that being Naomi, our high school girlfriend that we haven't seen in over a decade. She just got out of a marriage and is now back in town. We can meet up with her at the hotel to enjoy a meal and reminisce about the older days. Fujita will get back to us about his discoveries from the power plant and give us a weapon he put together. He suggests we go to the warehouse by the docks to test out the weapon. We'll have some targets there to focus on, that being mutated machinery? Yeah, that's a bit silly to say the least. Capping off the section is a fight with a giant piece of mutated machinery. Our next journey along the critical path will take us back to the hotel that our ex-girlfriend from high school, Naomi, is staying at. Seems like this area has been hit bad with an invasion of mutants. This is where the more bizarre mutant designs begin to emerge. Add in the bizarre dialogue before fights to add to the game's incomprehensible nature. There's several boss encounters throughout the hotel, but if you picked up the Cloudbuster, things are quite straightforward. Strafe around and whittle down their health. Now throughout Germs, we'll get several emails from Mindenko, a media company. When we boot up our computer, that's their logo. As the game goes on, we get more bizarre emails from Mindenko. Their first email is a survey asking us 3 questions. Have you been anxious? Have you seen anything strange? And finally, have people changed? It's a bit of an odd question. Further emails get more and more out there. be careful of the virus. It produces an extremely distorted version of human perception. Alright then. Now there's been an intervention. The situation has changed. Now the upper floors of its HQ are accessible. Information is to be revealed in accordance with the interplanetary agreement? What in the world is going on in Ndenko? Well, with that, let's go check out their headquarters. We'll come across these 3 levitating, meditating mutants, which again, Germs makes me think of Morrowind with Vivek here. And this is where some of the cosmic horror elements of Germs begin to pop up. It's been more invasion of the body snatchers up until now. These 3 beings here, their form isn't one entity, nor 3 separate ones. They take this form so we can understand it. They've been watching Earth for over 4,000 years and try not to get involved. These 3 are not the same species as the mutant virus. A few days ago, a spaceship crashed in the outskirts of town. This came from some other species decimated by the virus. This virus species is looking to take over Earth. You can kill these 3 to examine their corpse for further information, but you can only make out faint elements as it's impossible to get a clear understanding of. Glimpses of the constellation of Orion, a rainbow tunnel, a vortex of light. Some higher beings far beyond our level of comprehension. There's one place we haven't stopped by yet, and that's the Psychics Association. Because of course this town would have something like this. And what's going on with that music track here? It's another case of short loops that become hypnotic and knock you into a trance. Their leader says they knew we would come, which I guess makes sense since this is a Psychics Association. Made me think of that Stephen Wright joke. I almost had a psychic girlfriend, but she left me before we met. They mention the sewers connect to their association. Ruins that have been around for thousands of years, built by indigenous tribes. I wonder if those 3 at the Ndenko office had any influence over that. Then again, they did mention that they tried to stay out of affairs. They do provide us with this intriguing crystal weapon. That said, at this point the Cloudbuster had several levels of use behind it. It did far more damage and missed less often. Before we can reach the end, we'll have to clear it a few more places, like the mines and the hospital. Once again, the game ramps up on the mutant designs here. Take that low poly count along with low frame rates, and you get quite the monstrosities. Most notable being this one that waits for us at the end of the hospital, which again strafe around and whittle down their health. We'll get more pieces of lore behind these mutants. Ideas determine their form. They plan to head off to a new dimension through the catapult of consciousness. That's quite the term, I must say. Catapult of consciousness. Sounds like something you'd hear on a podcast by someone who's fried their brain with psychedelics. These last few mutants are more abstract in their nature, less monster-like, more like spaceships in a way. And what mutant awaits us at the end? It claims to be our other self, our mutant self. It wants to become whole with us so it could go through the catapult of consciousness. You know what this mutant reminds me of? The color scheme, the mention of being part of us, the way it looks. It's like the transcendent one from Planescape Torment, which makes this like the 3rd video in a row that I brought up Planescape. Guess that's a sign it's time for a replay. We'll run into our assistant from the office as the mine begins to collapse after the fight. Same goes for the catapult of consciousness. The door to the other dimension the mutants seek is now gone. And with that, we're done. Our protagonist isn't sure if this was all but an illusion, but their conscience is clear. And the game carries on, no credit roll or anything. You can still go around. Is there much to do? Well, not really. Talking to other people didn't seem to have much change. Fujita, our high school buddy who played a major role earlier on, doesn't have any new dialogue. Same as it ever was. So unlike what Earthbound did. Is Germs some forgotten gem worth seeking out? If you're looking for something out there, it sure is a fascinating experience. The most bizarre horror game I've covered on this channel. Is it a good game? I wouldn't say so, by no means an essential play. One that could be downright frustrating at times. But it's a game well ahead of its time with several of its elements, marches to the beat of its own drum. It has plenty of jank and charm, both good and bad. And with all its oddities, whether deliberate design choices or hampered by technological limitations, it can be downright unsettling. Elements of Invasion of the Body Snatchers crisscrossing with cosmic and existential horror. It leaps across the uncanny valley into something unsettling around every corner. Some games may have similar elements, but there's little out there that plays like Germs, and for good reason. There's also something within that I couldn't stop thinking about after playing. So if you're looking for something that's way out there, a horror title that few others have experienced, consider giving Germs a play in your future. It'll be a memorable experience, to say the least. Thanks for watching. I'd like to give a special shout out to certain fellow Boulder Punchers on YouTube memberships and through Patreon. For those under the thank you for your patronage tier, American Boot and Tom Terrible. For those in the now this is Boulder Punching tier, Ethan, the Madman in Waco. For those in the My Vision is Augmented tier, BBF in Bloxburg, Nico Pero, Sam Jones, Squid Vicious, Diego Pereira Santos Silva, and Will Han. If you'd like to support the channel further, receive early access to videos, get periodic updates, and my undying gratitude, consider joining the Patreon or YouTube membership. Thanks again.